All right, folks, we continue our conversation with Democratic presidential candidate Robert Kennedy Jr. Mr. Kennedy, what does need to change? You've mentioned various things about the border. A lot of people think the border is a problem. A lot of people don't like what looks like a never-ending commitment to Ukraine. You've criticized that as well. And I also observed that I'm old enough to remember the Kennedy family as having a strong following in the blue-collar community, and the Democratic Party has lost touch with a lot of those people. How do you change these things?
Well, I mean, I think the way to change things, I think first of all, ending the war and dismantling the American empire, arming America to the teeth, Fortress America at home, arming us to the teeth, and taking all that money that we've been spending on the military, which are stranded assets, which do nothing for the economy, and put it back into rebuilding our industrial base and doing everything based upon, is it good for our country? The way to make America strong globally is to build our economy at home. My grandfather always said that. And if, Paul Kennedy, who's a scholar, very, very famous historian, scholar at Yale, did an analysis of every empire over the past 500 years. He wrote a book, I think it's called The Decline of Empires. And every single one of them has declined because of an overextension of the military abroad. And, we're hemorrhaging money. We're sending $113 billion to the Ukraine for a war that was dreamed up by the neocons in the White House, as a global machinations for bringing down Russia and sacrificing, 350,000 Ukrainians in the process. But to bring our EPA's entire budget is $12 billion a year. Mm-hmm. Our CDC's budget is $12 billion. We're sending us $113 billion over there. Mm-hmm. We have 57% of Americans could not put their hands on $1,000 if they have an emergency. Yeah. 25% of our people are hungry, and food stamps. The same month, we printed $300 billion to bail out the Silicon Valley Bank and then topped off our aid to the Ukraine. That same month, we cut by 90% our food stamps to the poorest Americans. I have a friend who's been a commercial fisherman, comes from generations of commercial fishermen. He built a business, but he doesn't have a pension because he's a private business. Mm-hmm. He now is disabled, and he's dependent on food stamps. He got $285 a month from food stamps. On March 1st, he got a robocall from the government telling him his food stamps were cut by 90%.
Oh, my.
He now gets $25 a month. That's 90 cents a day to feed himself. And meanwhile, we have plenty of money. If we spent that money in the Ukraine, we could pay all the food stamps for years in this country. Mm-hmm. Oh, we don't have enough money for poor Americans. We have a crisis here in this country. I represent 1,000 families in Columbiana County, Ohio, whose lives were upended by the Norfolk Southern spill, which is, a result of agency capture of the DOT, of a government failure. That's why that wreck happened. They're living in a kind of poverty that I have never seen in our country. I saw it in South America when I was a kid. But the desperation that Americans are living in, and their government, our government is not hearing anything that they say. And, those people are paying because we don't have the money for the Ukraine war. We're borrowing $6 billion a day from the Chinese. Mm-hmm. And then we're printing money, and the way that gets paid for, because nobody's going to raise taxes, is through inflation, yeah, which is a tax on the poor.
Yeah, and the deficit continues to go up.
Yeah, and my friend who, just had his food stamps cut, he's watched the price of food. The government says food's growing up 20%, which is true. But if it's basic foods like chicken, eggs, dairy, mm-hmm, 76% in 2 years. Yeah. Oh, his food stamps are cut by 90%. The food is going up to pay for the wars and the lockdowns and the bailouts by 76%, and the poor are getting squeezed to death in this country, and the middle class no longer exists.
Yeah.
What would you say to Americans now who are struggling, like your friend who you mentioned, other Americans who just think this country seems to be getting worse and worse and worse, and the Democratic Party won't stop spending? What do you say to those Americans?
I think that's true, and the worst thing is the biggest expenditure is the military. It's war. We were told after after the Berlin Wall came down, the Soviet Empire collapsed, we were told we were going to get a peace dividend and military expenditures were going to be cut to $200 billion a year. Everybody agreed on that. And what happened? Now they're at $1.3 billion a year. If you include all the national security stuff and and veterans benefits, which we can't cut. The reason we need all this national security surveillance and X-rays at the airport is because of the wars abroad. Because we made so many enemies for us. We didn't have that before. We didn't. We're creating blowback that is making this country less secure, making Americans less safe, and making everybody in this country more poor, and making America a weaker nation.
Let me ask you about New Hampshire. What are your thoughts about their plans not to hold that as traditionally the time that they have first, but instead gone to South Carolina? A lot of people read that as trying to help Mr. Biden. What's your take on this? And what do you think should be done?
I mean, New Hampshire has been first in the nation for 80, 90 years. And New Hampshire plays this, and Iowa played these key roles. New Hampshire, all the other states, you can get money contributions from billionaires if you're a candidate, and then aerial bombard those states from 30,000 feet with advertising. Drop in occasionally and have a very highly staged rally that's in a bubble with the screened audience of your supporters,
right.
And it's kabuki theater. It's a theater. It's not real politics. In New Hampshire, you got to do politics. You got to go into the nail salons, into the diners, the gas stations, the barber shops. And there's an old lady there who reads The Economist and the Financial Times, and she's going to ask you the question, the follow-up question, the follow-up question of that. CNN will never do that to you. The New York Times will never do that. But when you go to New Hampshire, they vet you like you're running for a city council. And they play this important gateway role for the Democratic Party and the Republican Party of forcing politicians to do real retail politics and to listen to what Americans are going through on the ground. And that's why it's so key to have that. And abolishing that primary in order to fix the election, it's like the Soviet state, when the party picks the candidate and, instead of the people, it's just wrong. We should be, at this point in our history, we should be showing how good our democracy is and how well it functions, and not that, it's rigged.
Yeah. Mr. Kennedy, we had some news today that Elon Musk had invited you to be part of a Twitter Spaces conversation. Are you going to join him?
Yes, I am. I think I'm going on Tuesday I believe it's at 3:00.
Okay. Do you think that'll go better than perhaps people will say that Governor DeSantis's Twitter Spaces went?
Yeah, I mean, to tell you the truth, I felt very bad for Governor DeSantis because that should have been, the best day in his life. And, my announcement was one of the greatest days in my life. And, I feel badly that it didn't go well, that there was those glitches. But I guess he has worked out the glitches for me, hopefully.
We'll find out. Well,
Yes.
we appreciate you joining us and sharing your ideas. Obviously, we'd love to talk more and hope you come back and we can do so. Because you're somebody that has clear opinions and thoughts, and some of them are maverick-like. Some of them are not what other people have heard that we hear every single day. So we appreciate you coming by and sharing your thoughts.
And also, I love that you're having
Bob.
fun. And I love that you're having fun. That makes me happy.
Thank you, Katrina.
Your passion is palpable. So good luck.
Thank you.
Robert Kennedy Jr., thank you so much, sir.